Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us tmosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding this watch. Today we're discussing something very rare and very important. From Patek Philippe, this is the Nautilus, yes, but it is the 3711. Yes, the 3711, a white gold model that in many ways laid the groundwork for the dynasty that the later 5711 would become. So this watch, only ever made in white gold with a black dial, was built between 2004 and 2006 when the 5711 took over. Now this watch is estimated to have been made only in around 200 examples, and this is the first I have seen in years, so they rarely come to market. Now as you can see, this watch has not been gratuitously or recently refinished, so all of the original sharpness and metal volume remains. I actually recommend that if you purchase this watch, you leave it as is. Now, dimensionally, the watch is 40 millimeters in diameter, 42 if you measure from 9 to 3. It's 8.5 millimeters thick from lug to lug, if we're just counting the case, 44.2 millimeters, and then if we measure to the first link on each side, it is 48 millimeters across the wrist. Being white gold, and it does appear that it's gray gold, more on that in a moment, it's a weighty watch. It's got a lot of heft and substance to it. It's not big, and you can see it's not thick, but it's got presence, and it has a feeling of satisfying solidity on it. Eyes closed, it feels like a modern watch, not something 20 years on. And the timepiece is flat, so if you want to wear this as your dress timepiece, it will easily slide under a cuff. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and I can endorse this for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. The bracelet, the case, the bezel, they're well-recognized and well-established features of a classical jumbo Nautilus, which is to say they trace their origins to the original 1976 3700 designed by the creator of the Nautilus, Gérald Genta. So we have lugs blending into bracelet, blending into taper. We have little polished shoulders on the case flanks that blend into the lugs and continue along the shoulders of the links. Satin outboard, satin with polished intermediates on the top with a beautifully subtle tapered curve. Gérald Genta was a jewelry designer first and foremost. That's how he identified himself. So with watches like the Nautilus and previously the Royal Oak, his idea was to take a bracelet and add a timepiece, basically to create a men's bracelet that happened to tell time. You could see that the watch features quality subsequently lost on Nautilus models after about 2011, which is the use of screws to fix removable links in the bracelet. So if you like to do this at home, these can be removed with a jeweler's screwdriver, and you can see the links are all in place and correct, so you will be able to size as much or as little as you like. We have a double folding clasp with a clamshell locking mechanism. You can see the lock features the Calatrava cross, the symbol of the company. You'll also find it on the crown. You'll also find it on the winding rotor. Now the watch is what I would describe as gray gold, which is a type of 18 karat white gold that is white all the way through. Now there's no obvious example of burnished rhodium on this watch, so my impression is that these were made of gray gold right from the beginning, in a period when Patek was in transition from older rhodium-plated white golds to gray golds. Gray, again, is 18 karat white that is white all the way through and never needs to be rhodium-plated. You can see the complexity of the finishing on a Nautilus. One of the perennial reasons why I explain to people that it costs more than the Aquanaut, there's just more to do in terms of finishing this case. It's more complex. It has more different facets that break more sharply, and the assembly of it with the bezel and the wings locking onto the mid-case, it's just a bit more sophisticated and intricate in detail. Now, one feature you'll note is that this has a screwed-in case back, so unlike the original jumbos, which used monoblock construction, this really set the stage for the later three-piece 5711 case. You can also see going with this center seconds display, not entirely new. For example, the 3710 had center seconds, but if not for the black metallic Sunburst dial, you could be mistaken and consider this to be a 5711 of some variety, which it most definitely is not. Now, the 3711, a rare piece, but it has some of the common traits of every jumbo Nautilus. I've always thought the Nautilus looks like a more resolved version of the Royal Oak, because the Royal Oak has that faceted and rounded bezel, octagonal, on the outside, but then the Royal Oak's inner bezel, crystal, and dial are all round, whereas here, outer, inner, crystal, and dial all have the same rounded, faceted form. A big difference between this and the 5711 is that this is a true black dial. This is not some super dark blue. It does have a metallic sunburst brushing if you look at it closely, and of course it has the lateral ribbing distinctive of most Nautilus models. We have white gold hands and indices so that they will never tarnish or oxidize. We'll do a quick lume shot right here so you can get a sense of the watch. We're well into the era of superluminova. This never would have been a tritium dial. We do have a caliber 315 inside, which means, as with most of these center second Patek Philippe automatics, just a little bit of back pressure can stall out the seconds hand. So if you want to stall it, stop it, and set it to a reference time, that is quite easy to do. I call that the hacking hack. Now, there is a quick set system, so you can rapidly cycle the date if you desire to. And rolling all the way around, you'll be surprised to know this is not a screw-down crown. This is a push-down crown. And that's notable because later on, the 5711 with a screw-down crown would be rated at 120 meters. And I believe that this is probably comparable to its contemporary, the 3712, which had a push-down crown and a 60-meter rating, and I believe this would probably be a 60-meter as well if we had vintage literature. It would have been between 30 and 60, which is to say I don't encourage swimming with it, not given its age, not given its lack of a screw-down. Now, rolling around, you can see the hallmarking on the inside of the clasp right there. And then on the reverse side, you can see that it is a screwed-in case back, so this is a three-piece case. We've got a caliber 315, which is just a older version of the 324. The main difference between them is going to be that this operates at 3 hertz rather than the later movements 4, and depending on what era of 324 we're talking about, there may be some other differences. For example, this is 5-position adjusted with the Geneva hallmark, and of course the 3 hertz beat rate with the free-sprung gyromax style balance. All this pivots on 30 joules. And if you get close to it, you will see that despite the Geneva hallmark, the finishing here isn't quite as bright and detailed as you'll find on a Patek made in 2024. And I know a lot of people lament the passing of traditional trades, but I've actually found that in the display caseback era, Patek Philippe has raised its game, with more recent 26-330 and 324 movements actually being a little bit better detailed than what you see here. But this was the standard back in 2004, and it was considered to be outrageously fine. So this is just charting the changes over time, and you can see that it features a combination of stripes, circular, linear, engine turning, big, medium, and large. Actually, this is the size of it. On the base plate, it's largest. It's a little bit larger on the reduction wheel for the rotor. A little click there, and then it's smallest on the center. Screw heads are polished, so are the locating pegs that help to locate bridges on the plates below. You can see them here, for example, also off the edge of the bridge, featuring the end of the train. It's a good-looking movement overall, and a 45-hour power reserve. If you love this watch, maybe a long time before I have another one to offer you, so reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.